Hi guys,
Okay.
welcome back to the Clonestar podcast. I am your host, Sho Hurley. This week, I am absolutely delighted to be welcoming an incredible guest onto the show. You might think that you know about his life story, but I can absolutely guarantee that you do not. There is far more to meet the eye than we have with this man here. He is an actor, a playwright, a director, and an author whose book Effective Memories is out now. You might know him best from his star turn as Sybok in Star Trek V. We are delighted to welcome the legendary Larry Luckinbill. Larry, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Larry,
it's a good day here in Palm Springs, nice and cool.
Brilliant. Larry, where does your story start? Like, did you grow up in a creative household, or what kind of environment did you grow up in?
No, that's where the book starts. I grew up in a very dysfunctional family. My father was an alcoholic, and my mother was a codependent, and the fights they had were severe. And I was forced to intervene at times as a kid. And so the beginnings of my life were locked into a kind of family triage type of thing that was very difficult to deal with. I grew up in Arkansas, partially in the Ozark Mountains, which are quite ancient. And in fact, the language spoken, the sort of accent of the Ozarkers is related to Shakespeare, because the people who came from Dover and from Ireland and from Scotland all had certain accents, and the people who lived in the mountains of the United States and remained in the mountains because they felt safe there, the Appalachians and then the Ozarks, all have a similar tone to their speech. It's sort of like that, and it's got a little bit of a twang to it, and it's also there are many biblical phrases used, and and it's kind of a soft sound like the Dover sound. You know what I'm saying? One of my best friends was a British actor who had come from Dover, and he was living in the United States, and he was an immigrant and had married an American wife. And I used to love talking to him because the stories of the west of Europe always interested me. I read so many of the Irish authors, and my favorite at this point is Yeats, whose poem about an aged man is but a ragged coat upon whatever that is. I forget the poem already, but I love it. It's traveling to Byzantium, I think it is. It's O'Casey, those guys, the Abbey Theater were parts of my growing up in my imagination.
And Larry, why did you decide to write the book now? What was it that prompted you to say, this is a time for me to write my memoirs about my life and things like that? What was it that you wanted to get across by writing this book?
I'm almost 90. I'll be 90 in a month. And it was 10 years ago that my daughter said to me, Daddy, we don't know anything about your life. We know a lot about Mom's life, because her parents were Desi and Lucy from My Love Lucy. And there was a lot of talk about that. But I never spoke about my family because of the difficulties I had growing up. And I was also, I was stuck in the basically, I would say, the dark part of Catholicism. My parents were devout Catholics. We we used to kneel in the living room with our rosaries in hand and pray that Russia would be converted to Catholicism. And I remember thinking at age 12, I don't think this is going to work.
Oh my word!
But so much, and Frank McCourt, who may know, Frank McCourt, Angela's Ashes, and those books. Frank was a friend of mine, and I remember that at one point we were talking, and he was doing his little digs at things, and I said, you know, Frank, you have a kind of Irish maliciousness that's very interesting to me because I recognize it from my own family.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that you would say that, Larry, because we were recently talking to Adam Nimoy, son of Leonard Nimoy, and he was telling me that his favorite book is Angela's Ashes, written by Frank McCourt. And of course, that's set in my hometown of Limerick. So, what
Yes,
are the chances that that would be the case, that Adam's favorite book would be written by somebody who is actually who's a friend of yours? That's actually incredible. How did you get to know Frank, Larry?
I was doing one of my one-man shows called Great Americans that I wrote and directed and performed uh, for 35 years here in all over the country and all over the world, really. And we were on a ship, and we were coming through the Suez, and we ended at Alexandria and then at Cairo, and we had both Frank and I, as I learned, he was there with his new wife and Ellen, and so I learned from him that we had missed our possibility to go on a organized tour from the ship to the pyramids, and so I said, Frank. He came and talked to me about my show. I think I was doing what was I doing? I think it was Teddy Roosevelt at that time. Anyway, he was impressed with that show and so on. But I knew his reputation, of course, and I said we've missed the tour to the Giza pyramids and the Son et Lumière, which is coming up tonight. And would you like to take a shot at getting to it? And he and Ellen both were very enthusiastic. Yes, let's do that. So we debarked and went into Cairo and found a taxi driver who would take us there. And that ride, I will never forget because it was insane. The traffic and the way the guy drove, it was like we were going to die at every moment. So we get to the place, and I can see the pyramids. It's now dark. The pyramid is there. And the land yellow, I think. It was weird because what are they doing? They're lighting up the pyramid, and it doesn't look good. It looked terrible. Anyway, the guy let us off, and I said, well, there's still a long way to get into the place. He said, this is as far as I go.
Yeah.
The driver. I'm quoting him, but it was mixed language. But anyway, so we pile out, and we're on foot now. We have to get there, and it's getting on toward time for the thing to happen. And little did I know that things don't ever happen when they're supposed to in Egypt. And so we are walking. We walked at least a mile all through camel shit. But it was the camel's way in. and so we were cleaning the camel crap off of our feet, and we get down to our seat in the first or second row, and they begin this horrendous music. It was canned music, and it sounded like Berlioz or some composer you don't really want to hear anymore, and then the narrator began in a strange French accent, and it was hard to follow. And the news from the pyramid was that the Egyptians built it, and aren't we great people? And in the meantime, Frank and I are just putting this down as best we can with our wicked wits. And Ellen is sitting there like hoping for something better. Anyway, that's how we became friends. And I've read, I don't know if you've read a book of his called Teacher Man, but it's fantastic. It's really a good book.
Oh
it's
God.
about his teaching in New York public schools. And it's just a fabulous book.
It's such
and there's one.
It's such a small world, Larry, isn't it?
Go
That you would be friends with Frank McCourt, and he is kind of from my hometown, thing like that. So, Larry, after you and your family were not able to convert Russia to Catholicism back in the old days, what was it then that kind of brought you to kind of into a creative kind of space? Because like you've had such a life in terms of working on the stage, working on the screen. What was it that kind of sparked then eventually you kind of getting into all this?
I did not know what to do with my life. I really had no idea, and I was a slacker in school. I was a self-appointed slacker and a self-appointed class clown, and so I wasn't very successful in school, and that's all of it until the last of high school, and I did not know what to do. And in the meantime, I was writing sketches for assembly, and they were horrible, but they were funny. And I didn't know why or where this was coming from, because I had one friend, only one, and he and I were the outcasts of the entire school, the Catholic school, the parochial school. And so it ended up with my messing up the library table of the nuns with a magnesium flare that I burnt on top of their table, this ancient, beautiful table that the nuns prized above all things. And my father got very, very angry with me, and he said he said to me, "You're not going to be anything in your life. I can see that. You're just doing nothing. You're a foolish person." And he said, "You're running with dumb clucks." And I made a note to say to myself, "My friend is not a dumb cluck, asshole," to my father. But I didn't say that. I was very angry with him. I was madder than he was, if anything, because of the way we were living. And he was someone I had to pull out of the bars and fight with and all of that stuff. But he was also a very good man. He was a kind fellow, ultimately, and tall and handsome and all those things. And he looked at me in the car at 15 years of age, and he said, you're not going to be an actor or anything like that. He said, "You have about as much talent as a one-legged Indian in an ass-kicking contest." And I thought, that is the worst insult I could imagine. I can't kill my father, but I would like to. And so all of that was roiling around in me. I could barely get through life because I had such difficulties. And then things happened, and I, the nuns and my mother got me out of high school in 3 years and into a community college where we could afford, which was $100 a year. And in that junior college, that beginning college, I found teachers who really ripped me one. You know, they were fabulous. They were poor, and we were all poor. And these teachers were earning almost nothing, but they were so dedicated and so terrific. And I loved history, and I couldn't do anything at all in the sciences. And yet, my mother wanted me to become a doctor, so I was trying to be a doctor, and flunked everything. And then I went to the University of Arkansas, and the following year, and I flunked all of the physics, biology, algebra, everything. And the professor who had been at the Nuremberg trials identifying Zyklon B, I ran to his house to tell him that I had flunked organic chemistry for the second time, and that my mother was going to kill me because I couldn't be a doctor. And I was blubbering, and I had the faint feeling that I was inventing this blubber. And I thought, you're like Oliver Twist. I mean, a literary character came into me. And I thought, well, this is not going to work with this professor. So I wiped my nose with my shirt, and he, Mr. Luckinbill, come in, sit down. He said, I don't think you know that you have entertained us royally this year. He said, you don't know that I have eyes in the back of my head. And I think your imitation of me is actually very good. And it's taught me things about my teaching. But he said, I'm going to tell you something that you won't like. He said, you don't belong in the sciences. You belong in the performing arts. That was the first time anyone had said such a thing to me. And I was shaken to the core because I knew, first of all, I had to face down my mother with the fact that I had failed everything, and then to tell her that I was going to be going into show business. it was wonderful. Yeah, and I remember the nun who got me on the track too was Sister Matthew. She was Irish. Most of the nuns were either Irish or German, and they were rather sophisticated people, having grown up with the European educations that they had. Now they were stuck in Arkansas in the crazy backwoods with these backwoods people trying to make humans out of them. You know. Anyway, she had signed me something in some poem I had to Walt Whitman or Emily Dickinson or somebody that I supposed to have read and could read back to her sensibly. And I hadn't read it, so I did a parody of it. And I amused my friends, who the other slackers in summer school, and they were laughing, and I was laughing. Well, the Sister Matthew came down the aisle, and she hit me with a right cross that knocked me out of my chair and onto the floor. And I kept on laughing because it was so absolutely shocking. And I looked at her, and there was not a trace of anger with her, only her twinkling Irish eyes that told me that she was happy that she had done this, and she was glad that I was on the floor. And then she said to me, she said, don't laugh at the words of poets. Poets are important. Words matter. If you don't know how to communicate, you don't amount to much.
That's
And
brilliant.
that is still in my head, you know.
Larry,
It's a wonderful moment.
how is it that like 70 years later, you remember all of this with such clarity and such recall? And it's so like you were telling me these stories like they happened yesterday.
I know, and it is like that, and I don't know why that is. But I have actually do have a photographic memory, and it basically is about numbers and things like that. But also, as I wrote this thing, it took 10 years to write the book, and I really started writing it because of what my daughter said to me, and I didn't know that it would take 10 years. I had no idea, and I didn't know the depths that it would take me to, and the fact that I would actually psychoanalyze myself for 10 years to find out why I had committed so many horrible sins in my life, you know, relevant to the ladies and all of that stuff, and had a terrible divorce and all of that, and then met the woman of my life that you just saw, Lucy,
Yeah.
and found actually what is definitely real love.
And
And
Larry, as you said, like when you're writing this book, you spent a lot of time psychoanalyzing yourself. So as you said, it took you 10 years to write it. So you would have been late 70s, say going into your 80s and things like that. Did you find it
yes,
hard looking at yourself almost from like as an outsider and kind of saying, I have to own up to these things. I need to be honest with myself in doing this.
Joseph, the interesting thing is I've always been part outsider to myself. I have always looked at myself objectively as I did things. And so the key was honesty. I had to be honest. I had to tell the truth about myself. And I actually, I don't diss anybody in the book, anybody, even the people in show business that I could have dissed. I didn't do that. But because it seemed to me that everything that has happened to me in my life is my own invention, and I need to be responsible for it, and not take blame. I've done with blame, but I do, and I do the things that ought to be done by me, and I've learned those things from Zen study and all manner of other things. Also from people like St. Paul. I read the Gospels, and I've come back to a kind of understanding of the religion I was brought up in, without all of the sin crap. You know, I don't believe in eating meat on Friday and then going to hell. Why would there be a God that made a hell? I mean, that's kind of weird, and I'm not sure. Uh, I was an altar boy for years, and a really good one, a really devout one, and I guess, still am in a sense, although I don't go to church anymore.
Yeah. And Larry,
Yeah.
when you're kind of reaching the stage now where like you've kind of, after getting the right cross from the nun and things like that, did you feel at this point in your life that you're now starting to build towards something that you've been told by your professor that you belong in the performing arts and things like that? Do you feel now, after speaking to your mother and saying, this is what I want to do you feel you're starting to get a sense of purpose in your life at this point?
Yes. 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 Suddenly there was purpose, and suddenly, when I began to try to be an actor and found out just how difficult it is, I had to rely on that this was my place to be, so I better do it well. And uh, by the time I got to after 11 years in New York, on the nickel, on the token, uh, walking most places 100 blocks to make the rounds and leave my picture and resume, In fact, there was one story in the book where I had walked from Harlem down to Midtown, New York, with my resumes and my bag of, Larry's a good actor stuff, and it was very hot that day, and I decided to do one more drop off, and so I went to this place in 50th Street and went upstairs, and the door was open to the producer's place, and there was an old man there sitting there, Hunt and Peck, typing and cursing, motherfucker, shit, God damn it, oh yeah, that shit, fuck, yeah, two finger typing, and I had my picture, my resume, and this is interesting because he was this producer in this particular place was supposed to be producing a movie, a television movie about an Irish kid, and I had played an Irish kid in Summer Stock, and I thought, hey, I could do that, and I was a little bit young for it, but I said that to him. I said, I didn't know who he was. He looked like a secretary. I said, sir, I know that your organization is going to produce this film, and I'm pretty good at an Irish accent. So how about giving me a shot? And the motherfucker says, just kept typing. And then he looked up at me like this. Wait a minute. He was like this over his glasses. And he looked at me for a long time, and I thought, I got a chill up my back. Oh, he's really looking at me. Maybe something's happening. And I thought, well, maybe it was just a draft from the hallway. Because he says to me, you're not right for anything.
Oh, well.
Yeah. And this was after walking 120 blocks downtown.
Now, hang on a second, Larry. You're not getting away with this. If you said to that man all those years ago that you could do a good Irish accent, how good is your Irish accent still?
It's not good at all. No, it's no. I can sort of make the sounds, but accents. I'm good at my Arkansas accent, because that's what I know.
So Larry, obviously this guy told you were going nowhere and things like that, but how did you get on in New York then? When was your kind of big break, I suppose, that kind of propelled you?
Good question. The big break was 11 years after I got to New York, and I had done every just as in college, I had done everything that was offered to me. I'd taken all kinds of chances and worked for nothing. I worked mostly as a host in a restaurant, and there's a great story about that too. How about the people of Italian descent, New York, Neapolitan, basically. Anyway, there was a lot of gangsters in the restaurant business,
Oh, very good.
Yeah, but that was fun, and that supplied me with food, and so I had gone to Catholic University for a master's degree, and I got it. And in the process, I met a young fellow from the Mississippi who. There were two places to exercise your desire to be an actor at Catholic U. One was the main stage, which was an old U.S. Army theater, which had fantastic acoustics because it was all wood, and the other side of the street was something called the Lab Theater, which was an ancient brick building with very narrow, but that's where they stored all the props and so on that didn't work, and that we're tired of, And this kid was producing some show. I think it was a Eugene O'Neill play. And I watched this kid. He made magic with bringing trash out from the sides and making a set out of it. And he was very interested in making the play work, which is what play was it? It was not one of O'Neill's good plays. It was a piece of crap, actually. But anyway, he was working on that, and I enjoyed meeting this kid, and he reminded me of me somehow. He was younger than me, and he came from Mississippi, and so I was visiting my auntie in Arkansas during this period, after this period, and this kid called me from Mississippi and said, "Can I come and visit with you?" And I said, "Sure." So he flew up from Mississippi to Fort Smith, Arkansas, where I lived, and we dragged the drag and went to the Dairy Queen and went across the bridge to Oklahoma to get beer and wine because Arkansas was dry, and we sat by the river, by a stream that ran along the railroad tracks, just like out of a Tennessee Williams play, and watched the water moccasins slide by. And we started talking about our families. And I made some comment about how my families didn't understand me, and how about the thing that troubled me in my life was that I couldn't love. I couldn't love anybody. And he said, "You have no idea." And he moved closer to me and he said, my father's a violent alcoholic. My mother is a drug addict. And that's why I had to get out of Mississippi. And he said, "You don't know anything about this stuff." And then he moved very close to me, and he looked at me, and I knew that he wanted something from me, but that I could not respond to it in the way that he wanted. And yet he became one of my closest friends for the rest of our lives together. So this kid wrote a play. 11 years, I don't know how many years. It was 10 years after this exchange that he called me in New York and offered me a play that he had written called The Boys in the Band, which is a story of 9 homosexuals having a birthday party, and it's a good play. And that's what I told him after he came to me with it, like this, like holding it like a baby, and saying, "I've written this play," and he was dead broke. He had been sort of the helper for Natalie Wood and R.J. Wagner in Hollywood, and he had been in a house that they had gotten him to live in while they went on a European tour, and the food ran out and the booze ran out, and this kid was a violent alcoholic himself. And anyway, so the story is that he wrote this play in about 3 weeks and brought it to New York and offered it to his friend, me, because no one else would read it. No actors would read it, no producers, no gay actors, no gay producers would read it, and because it was just not something that they thought had any commercial value. And so when I read it, I recognized it as a good play. And I said, "Mark, I'll do it." And he tried to cry, but he never cried. He'd wipe it away. And so I did this play. There were nine men in the play. 2 of us were straight and 7 were not. And I used to joke that the 2 of us were assuming the position. And anyway, but but the play was raw, and it was I don't know. We also did it at Wyndham's in Piccadilly Circus in London. We did it for 3 months there. It was a very huge success, and people were titillated by it. They wanted to know about these gay people, what they were up to, you know, and so that put me on the map. That play actually put me on the map, and people were very, they were very, they thought I was the hero of the play because I was a straight man, and I had consented to do this play that might mess my career up. And my agent said that.
Larry, what did you think kind of connected with the audience with the play itself? Because as you said, like no one wanted to touch it, but it was made. So why do you think it connected with people, and why do you think it was the success that it was?
I think because it was truthful, and they recognized the truth of these people struggling to be human. At that time in our country, there was something called the closet, and people were locked in it, self-locked sometimes, for safety, for security, because particularly in the South where I grew up, if you were gay, you could be murdered at any time, and so everybody hid what they were, and the hiding is what gave the extraordinary strangeness of some gay attitudes, because they were isolated, self-isolated. So anyway, this play opened that closet door. It unlocked it, and a year later, there was a gay uprising against the police at Stonewall, a restaurant, a bar, in the same area in the Village, and that was given the credit for the gay revolution that we have now, and but our play, which was basically a drama comedy. It was very funny. It was also very, very bitter and very, very sad, and it still remains a good play to me. And Mart wrote a whole bunch of other plays about his parents, the same parents he told me about. And some of them are very good, some are not, but this was his big hit in life. And from that, I got a job I got a two picture deal with Otto Preminger, and I did the first one. It was a play. It was based on a book called Such Good Friends, and it was big stuff in New York. And the movie was, I mean, the cast was wonderful, and Otto was a tyrant. He was a dictator and a weird fellow.
Oh.
Yes, and very, very nasty to particularly the leading lady, Diane Cannon. He was really bad to her. And I actually quit. I went to his brother, who was a producer, and I said, Vigo, or Ego, whatever his name was, probably Ego. I said, did Otto sign my contract? He said, no, we don't sign those until later. And I said, well, I haven't signed mine either. And so I quit.
Thank God.
And he said, what? You can't do that. I said, yes, I have done that. So just figure it out, because Otto, I hate the way Otto treats Diane and the rest of us, and I can't stand it anymore. And he told Otto this, of course, and and the agents fixed it all, and I was back in track on Monday. But guess what? Otto couldn't have been nicer to me. He offered me lunch every day.
Larry, I have to ask you. So, at this point now in your life and in your career, you've gone from being a slacker, you've kind of taken a chance, you've gone to New York, you've gotten all these experiences, you've been in a really successful play, you're now in the movies and things like that. In your own head, are you at this point looking back on your life going, wow, look at what I've achieved by, say, how I've approached things, the work ethic I now have, and things like that? What did you kind of think of yourself at this point? Did you kind of look at your younger self as this completely separate individual? Or did you say, no, I was someone who was learning all the time, I was growing, I was trying to find my purpose, and now I have that?
That is a great and interesting question. And the answer is no, I did not. I hated myself.
My
I
words.
did. I did. I just hated myself. I didn't quite know it, but I was beginning to drink just like my daddy. I thought I can drink that son of a bitch under the table. Then I said it's like Richard's cork leg. So Brendan Behan. It's like, and Dylan Thomas had died outside my apartment in the village on the street, outside the White Horse Tavern in the village. He had died from alcohol.
Yeah.
And Thomas was somebody I respected, and Brendan Behan for sure. And I was shutting my eyes to what I was doing. I was married. I had 2 children, and I was being very unfaithful to my wife, and I hated myself. But I was also a damn good actor, and I was handsome and and healthy.
Wait a second, Larry. There's none of this. I was handsome. Larry, you still are handsome. Don't ever say that you're
Okay.
not.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. At 90 years old, I'll take anything.
But
Yeah.
what you said there, and I love the confidence the way you said that, you were a damn good actor. What made you aware that you were a damn good actor?
I think because people began asking me to do things. They were always difficult things, roles. And I could cut it. I could read it cold and get bits and pieces of it better than most actors. I was not afraid. I was eager. For instance, the first thing I were given in college to do was Prometheus from Prometheus Unbound, or Prometheus Bound, and I didn't know how to handle any of that stuff, but I launched into it. I used my own anger as Prometheus, and so I was actually doing affective memory even then, so I knew I was good. I knew, why are you good? And I said, well, it's because I have all this anger and this bitterness. And I hid it. I was happy and gorgeous and, cool. And I was Mr. Cool, actually, really. But at this point, I've learned I've learned better. I don't have to be cool anymore. I mean, I have 5 children. They're adults, all of them, and they're all having problems, that they do. And my wife and I are just taking care of these problems. It's like turning in a circle. And at one point in your life, you think, well, gosh, okay, the kids are up now and they're on their own. And no, no. It used to be you could buy them off with a quarter. Now it's I need $20,000 to a down payment on a house. That's where Frank McCourt's malicious humor goes in.
So, Larry, at this point in your career now, you're in the movies as well. You've shown that you can stand up to directors and things like that. Where do you want to go at this point in your life? Because obviously, I know you become a writer, you become a director, you become a teacher, you even become involved with the US Department of State. Like,
Yes.
At this point, like, is it that, are you happy just to kind of keep on going and say, it's fine, the roles will keep coming to me, I'm the coolest man around, it's going to be fine? Or do you say, no, I have ambition, I want to do more, I want to write, I want to direct, I want to stay with the stage? Or where did you start thinking those things? Where did your ambition start to grow?
I think it started as a reality. Although I've always written, and I wrote a lot of poetry, and that wasn't poetry. I wrote a lot of essays that I tried to make sense of my life and stuff, and it's all crap. And I've got these journals to prove it. You know, uh, it's but I've nevertheless I haven't burned up any of it. Like somebody in an Ibsen play, throw it in the fireplace. No, I don't do that. I have a big trunk full of stuff that's still there. Anyway, I think what happened to me, I got a chance to go work for the State Department in Africa, and then it turned into Africa and Italy, and I went out to the Sudan, and you know what's going on in the Sudan now. And at that moment, it was just about to tip to that same thing back then, 1960s, 61. And I was sent there because John Kennedy had a conversation with General Aboud, who was running the Sudan, and he asked him what he wanted. And this, General Aboud said, we would like to have a national theater. I beg your pardon? Arab National Theater, Sudan.
Yeah.
It was strange.
Yeah.
But they sent me, a 25-year-old kid with a master's degree, out to Khartoum to make a national theater for the Sudan. And it took me 2 years of absolute futility to make it, to find out that actually what they wanted, what they thought was a national theater, would be an ice rink. So they wanted the ice capades. And I thought, well, part of the reason must be because the Arab boys walk down the street holding hands because they can't dare touch a woman. And so if it's the ice capades, they're going to see a lot of panties. They're going to see a lot of whirling dresses go up, like ballet or something. And
so
anyway,
what did you do in your 2 years there, working out that, well, they didn't want what they actually wanted? Was it a frustrating time down there then, Larry, in that situation?
Well, no, because I had planned a series of lectures about the theater history.
Yeah.
And I was working with the United States Information Agency,
yeah,
there, and the British Council, because we were both in the same street. And I have made some good friends from the British Council. They asked me to direct Romeo and Juliet for them. I did. And I did the Christmas Carol for them, the Dickens thing. And then I did 3 or 4 American plays with Arabs and the people from the embassy. And they really liked what I was doing. So I gave lectures and all of that stuff. However, I did get involved with 2 groups, one a student group at the University of Khartoum, and a group of people who wanted a theater. They were in Omdurman, which is the old city across the Nile. So I got a scooter, and I was being condemned by the people in the embassy because I was riding around on a scooter, not representing the United States the way it needs to be represented, with the big fat car and a cigar. I was I was driving around on a Lambretta or some Vespa or something. And anyway, I found out that the group that was in Omdurman, who were pharmacists and lawyers and doctors and so on, they wanted me to direct them in Macbeth. And they told me that the Arab version of Macbeth was better than Shakespeare. And I said, okay, let's see. But when you get to the witches,
Yeah.
it's all hail, Thane of Cawdor, that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And then they're doing their potion, and he's standing there stuck. He's all bloody from the fight, and Banquo's over there
Yeah.
watching, and and in Arabic uh, that's oh, it's what's the uh, it's it's the words in Arabic mean peace, 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 peace. It's the I can't think of it now. That's because I'm 90 years old, and this stuff jumps out of your head. It really
Yeah.
does. But anyway, it was completely Arab, and it couldn't work as Shakespeare. And I told the guys this. They said, "Well, you can fix it, can't you?" And I said, "Sure, sure, sure." So we were working on Macbeth there, and in the meantime, I'm over at the university where the students are producing Arms and the Man, which is a military put down.
Oh.
If you remember this Shaw play,
Yeah.
it makes the military people look like idiots, and the country's being run by a military bunch of people. So what happened at the end of my time in Africa, which had actually turned me to a larger sense of what the world was
Yeah.
and how I should fit into it.
Yeah.
And I had never felt that way before. Wasn't particularly political, but after that 2 years, I was political after that. But anyway, what happened was, just as I was finishing up my run there, and I was diplomatically safe. I had
Yeah.
a security thing, and one day I started out to the university for a dress rehearsal.
Yeah.
Of Arms and the Man, and the kid playing Bluntschli was a rather good actor, and he was quite young and quite short, and he fit the Bluntschli very well. And I'm going along on my scooter to get to the university, and I hear a noise behind me, and I pull over and look, and there's a tank coming down the road called Jamhuriya, and trucks full of soldiers with arms. I was like, what? I pulled off. They went past me, and within a minute and a half, they are blowing smoke and shooting at the kids who are protesting
Oh my word.
the military government inside the gate of the university. Well, they destroyed our set. They burned it up that day, and Fuddle, the guy who was playing Bluntschli, was arrested and taken to an island in the Nile where he died.
Oh my word.
And I also had a problem with the people over in Omdurman because the government shut them down, and because I think they were substantial citizens, they didn't do anything to them, but they completely busted up their theater desires. So, and an 18-year-old kid who had come to me and asked for a loan to get a secretarial course. This kid had walked from Uganda to Khartoum, 1,000 miles. in Africa,
Oh my word.
where the animals, the snakes, the whatever, the bad guys, the bandits, are all over the place. And this kid was killed, and because he was living under the Nile in a sort of hovel place
Yeah.
where people lived who had no money, and he had sent me. I got in touch with him through the priest, the white father, at the cathedral in Khartoum. Now all of that stuff right now has been destroyed. I mean, Khartoum is a complete mess now, and it was a decent town, at the time, and so that set me onto a political framework. And when I was 55 years old, I was my wife and I had an office in the center of New York, and we had a company we were producing things, and I did a rant. It was Christmas time, and I was watching the smoke come up from the street, and uh, the Peter Max picture on the wall of the other building, and I went crazy. I said, I don't want to be an actor anymore. I can't stand this. I'm not. There's nothing going on. I hate it. I hated him. I did my rant, and Lucy just looked at me. Yeah, 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 and the phone rang, and a producer named David Susskind, who was quite well known, uh, called me. He was my Dutch uncle, if you know what I mean, and he constantly was trying to hire me for some piece of shit that he was producing for television, and I was always saying no, and he was always saying, "Well, why not? You're unemployed, aren't you?" And I always was. And so he said to me, all right, I'm sending a script to you. It's Lyndon Johnson speaking to his people in the White House after his resignation, and you're going to play Lyndon for me. And so read this thing and get back to me. And I said, you're crazy. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm not 6'5". I'm not a fucking Texas creep politician. And I demonstrated against him at the Pentagon in the war. And he said, Larry, that will change. And I said, oh, well, okay, yeah, right, fine, I'll take a look. So I took, the script was 69 pages, single space.
Oh.
Now, any one-man show, as I learned then, because I did the research then, was no more than about 30, 32 pages, maybe 35.
Yeah.
I was, at that point, had not written much of anything. I was too busy acting. And so David said, I said, this is 69 pages. Well, I'm jumping my gun here. Anyway, I told him I would come up to his office on Madison Avenue and show him why I could not play this role. He said, come ahead. So I get to his office, and his secretary, Jean, I'll never forget her. She looked at me and she said, oh, we're so glad you're going to do this part for us. I knew what that meant. So David was sitting there, and I pulled up a chair to his knees and my knees and next to his, and I opened the script and I began reading. And as I read, I began to hear my father's voice coming from me. My father's accent, because Lyndon was a Texan, and we had lived in Texas when I was growing up. And I heard this coming through me, and I started to cry. And I just leaned back, and he just looked at me. And I said, yes, I'll do it. So I took it on, It was a very big success for public television. And after that, I got a gig to do it on stage in Texas, and I did that. And then I did tours of Linden for several years, and that led to Clarence Darrow, who you may not know.
I do. I know the name. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes. And the greatest defense lawyer we've had. And I decided to write a play about that. And after having fixed the play that my friend wrote for television of Lyndon, I had to fix it, and I did. And I thought, I can write, I can do this. And so I took on Darrow, and I wrote that play and did that. And then Teddy Roosevelt came up because we were about to invade Iraq.
Yeah.
And all of these things were coinciding that our country was doing that were weird and fucked up. And I mean, we had just gotten out of a Vietnam problem.
Yeah.
And we're now going to go into another one.
And Larry, just out of curiosity, so when you're talking about the Lyndon B. Johnson play, you're talking about a moment in time where he's talking to his staff. You're talking about the Teddy Roosevelt one, you're talking about the Clarence Darrow one that you wrote then. Did you write them as a moment in time again, or was it over a period of time that these would take place?
Good question. Darrow, I was able to access the summations of the trials, a lot of the trials, and so I started to play with his growing up, and then I went to the fact that as a lawyer, he was making more than the president of the United States because he was working for a railroad company, and he was basically dumping on the people that were making who had been maimed or killed and were trying to get justice from the railroad company, and his job was to squash them. And all of a sudden, a man named Victor Debs, who was an Alsatian immigrant to the United States, who was a labor organizer, got to him and said the Pullman, the black men of the Pullman car thing are going on strike. We're going to take them on strike, and it's going to paralyze the whole Western United States. We need you to help us, and we don't have any money. Darrow quit the job that he had with the railroad, took that job for nothing, defended them, failed, but it led him to become the Darrow that we all know, who defended Leopold and Loeb and so many people. And he is my idol, really, my mentor. And from Darrow, I had to do Teddy because Teddy had so many flaws as a human, but also so many incredible things that he decided he better do to make things better for Americans. And then I did that, and that was a success. And then I did Hemingway. And I did that. It was another Catholic thing. I had read Hemingway, everything he ever wrote, when I was 14. And my buddy and I would talk about Hemingway on the bus, going back and forth. And we both loved Hemingway, you know. And then he killed himself. And, you know, suicide is forbidden in the Catholic Church. So I just dumped Hemingway by the wayside. I don't think he cared, but
but Larry, like, you make it sound like it's just so easy to say, I'm going to write a one-man play about Clarence Darrow, about Teddy Roosevelt, and I'm going to perform. I'm going to do one-man play, no problem at all. Like, at this point, your ability, your confidence, and who you are must have been absolutely brilliant to kind of say, I can do it and I can take it on. But these are very, very heavyweight personalities that you're going to be kind of writing a play about to entertain people, inform people, but also be true to who they are. Like, did you feel that weight of expectation on you making these types of plays?
I just jumped in. I did. I jumped in like an Arkansas hillbilly. I can do this. I can do this, buddy. Just give me another drink. No, I did take them on that way in the spirit of I can do this.
Yeah.
And I I remember working on Teddy. I couldn't find a motor for the, he did so many great things. And the other two plays that existed about him in our country were just lists of those things that he did, the great stuff he did.
Yeah.
And they were not dramatic, really.
Hmm.
They assumed that the thing itself was dramatic enough.
Yeah.
Like the Panama Canal, whatever. I knew that was not the case because I had my good education in theater at Catholic U and the University of Arkansas, and I had read every damn thing about writing there was. Anyway, so I had 30 books on my counter in my office in Katona, New York, which is where we lived. And my wife, it was Christmas, it was November, and I had like a month and a half to finish the play that I was doing for Teddy, because I was doing it for the Lyndon Johnson Presidential Library.
Yeah.
I opened all of my one-man shows there in an 1,100 seat theater. And Lady Bird was always in the third row. And Lady Bird became my queen, I have to say it. I met her in the library when I was being shown around, and this woman came around the corner, and she was wearing an apron, and she had her shoes in her pockets, and she was barefoot. And I thought, that's a cleaning lady. She's barefoot. Interesting. She walked up to me, and oh shit, I recognized Lady Bird. And I just blurted out this. I said, "You look just like my mother." And she said, "Oh, honey, that is the nicest compliment I've ever had." Anyway, I was there at the library, and I'm trying to write this play, and I don't have a motor.
Yeah.
I don't know what makes Teddy walk out onto the stage and talk to you.
Yeah.
Why? Why would he do that?
Yeah.
And the one-man plays always have that problem. What is that person telling an audience all his secrets for? And that's never been solved, really, until I solved it. I took care to make them public occasions. Anyway, Teddy was a mystery at that point, and my wife came over and she said, "Listen, I've got our Christmas cards to do, and I want you to help me sign them." And I said, "Well, how many?" She said, "There's 250." I said, "Oh, 250." I see. Okay, yeah, sure, I'll help. And then she came over the next night and said the same thing, and then the next night said the same thing. And I was still up there trying to get the goddamn motor for this play from the books I had arranged out there. And so this time she brought just 2 cards, and she threw them on the desk in front of me, and she said, "Well, I've done the rest of them. Now you do your friends." I see. Okay, I have 2 friends. I'm able to do that. Anyway, that same night, I was shocked because I was not doing my familial duty. And I opened the last book, which was written by Corinne Roosevelt, his sister. And I thought it was treacle. I thought it was just nonsense because it was TD and cuckoo, cuckoo, and all those things that brothers and sisters call each other. And I thought, I don't want to read this crap. But it was, I think it was the second chapter. There was a paragraph which said that described that her husband was running for Republican office in New York and in Saratoga, and had asked Corinne asked Teddy to come and make a speech for him. That same day, his son Quentin was shot down over the German-French line. He was with the squadron of air pilots who, he was 19 or 20 years old, and he had got himself into the Air Corps. And Teddy was sort of proud of that, because Teddy's life had been devoted to this kind of warrior mentality. Okay. And so he was kind of proud of that. Now his son is flying at that age, flying one of those crates with the machine gun in the front, and somebody's calling me, but never forget it. I know who it is. It's the Jim. Wanted to know why I'm not there. Okay, so anyway, Teddy's son was just like him. He was a warrior. He was at 20 years old. He was a very aggressive kid. And physical therapy.
Am I taking you away from your physical therapies today, Larry?
No, you're not. So this is physical therapy. This is mental therapy, anyway.
Exactly.
So I was told by a friend of mine who had a friend who had written a book about this, because he had been in that same squadron.
Yeah.
And he had described what happened. They had put Teddy at the back of the crowd of the five planes. He was the rear in the squad, and because they did not want him, he was the ex-president's son.
Yeah,
they did not want him killed, and this guy described that they saw a red flash above the clouds. It was the Red Baron and his squadron going by, and he instinctively looked back to see that Teddy was still behind him, and Teddy had already attacked. He was on attack. He was going straight up toward the Germans by himself. And within 30 seconds, here he comes down, dead. Was he dead? When they first got the word, Teddy did not know, because they said his cousin Eleanor was in Paris, and so some of his buddies said, no, I think he was able to land. He's probably okay. They didn't know in those days,
Mm.
And so then Teddy was going to make the speech, to get back to the point here, for his sister. And he was about to get on the train that morning, and a guy came up from the Evening Sun, the New York Sun, with a notice saying, Mr. President, I have to tell you that Quentin has been buried by the Germans with full military honors where he fell. And he did not tell his wife. He got on the train. He went over and because his daughter said, his cousin, no, his sister said, you don't have to come, I understand. He said, no, it's my simple duty. So he goes and he's giving the speech, and he always had a speech this thick.
Who's that handsome man in that book cover there now?
With all the hair. Yeah. I might read you something if we still have time. I'm not sure. But anyway, he was on the podium. He always had this big, thick speech that he had written, and he was a terrible speaker. I was able to hear some of his ranting. He had that kind of a voice, and it wasn't Harvard, it wasn't like a lovely Ivy League. But anyway, he launched into this speech about how Wilson was a mess and the war was being not pursued properly. And suddenly he stopped and he put the thing aside and he spoke from his heart and he said, the people, the young men that we send over there at the peak of their lives, don't they deserve those who come back, if they come back, don't they deserve to have a better nation to come back to? And that was black boxed in every newspaper in the world. That message that they deserve. And that still moves me, makes me cry. Don't they deserve a better nation when they come back? And don't we feel this every day in this world today? It's what we live with now. We live with a world that's blowing up all around us, all around us. I mean, we've got an election in 3 weeks that may turn into God knows what will happen. Anyway, in the meantime, Ireland is thriving.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's the important part there. So you found your motor for your...
Yes, I found that motor. Here's a guy talking about giving a speech and hating on Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah.
And suddenly he stops because he has learned, which he tells us, he's learned this. And that leads him to defend his life to us. He can't but defend his life because he knows he's to blame.
Yeah.
He knows that it's his attitude toward warrior stuff, San Juan Hill and all of that, that has influenced Quentin. And now Quentin's gone. And Quentin was his wife's favorite. And I went to Sagamore Hill, which is where the house he built in Oyster Bay, New York. And it's a wonderful house. And I'm touring through it, and the ranger, the park ranger, said, you see this little room here? That was Quentin's room. And over here is this is the master bedroom. And I said, why are you showing me this? He said, because Teddy died in this little room. He died of congestive heart failure in this little room. And his wife was in the other room. And I thought, he died of a broken heart.
Yeah.
But that's my story. And I got a beautiful teddy bear to accompany me through this movie, this story.
Yeah.
And the teddy bear, I talk to the teddy bear, and the teddy bear talks back to me, and all that stuff. So it's a good show. And then Hemingway, of course, I had to deal with the fact that I dumped him after he committed suicide. He was nothing to me anymore, not my friend, and not my guide, not my mentor, not my macho guy. So that was a long hassle too, because I tried to use some of the fiction to make a play, but then Patrick Hemingway, the surviving son, sent me a cease and desist, and it said it was vicious actually, and the lawyer read the thing to me, and I thought, why did he do that? Why did he say that? He said, Mr. Mr. Luckinbill is nowhere near or anything like Mr. Hemingway. So it's like saying you're not good for anything. So it was like a big circle, you know. And I said, "Well, fuck you, Mr. Patrick. I'm gonna." And I got the opportunity to write a play based on only on his letters,
Yeah.
which Mary Hemingway had given to a foundation and kept out of Patrick's orbit, so he couldn't do anything about it. So I had read the letters. In the letters, Hemingway was a completely different man from the macho guy that you read about, who said to at the end of Sunrise, the sun also rises, said when the girl is saying, "Yeah, we could make a life together," and I said, "Yes, wouldn't it be pretty to think so?" That was the real Hemingway, but it wasn't. The real Hemingway was a man who was tortured by everything. His life was absolute misery. His mother hated him. He hated his mother. You can't live that way. You can't have a life hating your mother. You just can't. Or your father. You can't hate your parents. You're going to have to deal with them. So my book is a long dealing with my parents, dealing with that and coming to the conclusion that they were heroes and that I would do well to actually do what they did, fulfill them, you know. And now I've got 5 children, and I'm living actually at this age. I'm living. I say frequently, arriba los cientos, you know, arrived 100. Because I want to be 100 years old, and I never even dreamed about that. When I was 65, I thought, this is it. I might as well die. But things are just starting.
Well, Larry, in fairness, for a man of 89 years old, you look, you sound, and you absolutely come across as a man in his 60s or 70s at the absolute max. Like, good Lord, you're a wonderful man for 89, Larry. Larry, you said a minute ago you wanted to read a bit from your book. What would you want to read from it? I'd love to hear some of the book.
Okay. Yeah, I got it.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. I just had it all prepared here. This is a little bit of a trip here. There was a moment in life when my auntie, one of my aunties, slapped my mother in the face so hard that it knocked her glasses off. My mother was 80 years old, and my auntie was 90 years old. And she was the leader in that family, and she had the right to slap my 80-year-old mother in the face. Why? Because my mother had moved to California from Fort Smith, from this backwater, and had arrived with some different ideas.
Ah.
Yes, and Aunt Kate could not tolerate that. So anyway, this same aunt, now it starts. Where is it? Oh, yes. One aunt, the most disapproving of me, the one most like my strict grandmother, and the one who slapped my mother. This well-to-do aunt, affronted by my mother's new California attitude, lashed out at her viciously, and my mother was devastated by that slap and the lack of love. My aunt's inability to accept her as she was, even after 70 years. But this same aunt gave me the most wonderful birthday present imaginable. I was 7. It was the Sunday of my first Holy Communion. She handed me a wrapped present. It was a beautiful book, The Adventures of Robin Hood, written by Howard Pyle and illustrated by Laurence Beale Smith. I opened it at once. The preface began, "You who so plod amongst serious things that you feel it a shame to give yourself up for even a few short moments to mirth and joyousness in the land of fancy. You who think that life hath not to do with innocent laughter that can harm no one. These pages are not for you. Clap to the leaves and go no farther. Yes. Oh my God. For an author to say that to a kid like me at age 7 was pure heaven. And that rhymes. And it's exactly right. That message was as important to me as knowing the Latin responses when I was an altar boy speaking sacred words. I stood at the window at our little house in Fort Smith to read those words of Mr. Piles with the crisp blue book propped on the sill and our own lace curtains pushed aside so I could get more light. I could not see the words clearly enough. I was 12 before I got, I'm leaking here. I was 12 before I got my first pair of glasses. Suddenly I had permission for my feelings from one of my gods, a living author. I wasn't crazy. Some grown-ups felt as I did. I have wondered ever since how it was that my uptight aunt would give me such a book. Didn't she know the sedition she would plant in my heart? Maybe she dismissed Robin Hood as childish. Maybe she thought the pictures were nice and I could just look at them and be happy. Could it be that she saw me as a poor relation in need of fantasy? The book was a rope ladder lowered to a boy stuck at the bottom of a well. Maybe she loved me. I ate that book. I smelled it, I tasted it, I kissed it. It slept with me in my bed at night after I read a precious bit of it under the covers with a flashlight. It walked to school in the rain with me, safe in my cheesecloth book bag. It sat beside me at dinner and breakfast. It was my constant friend and the touchstone of my imagination. It was life. In contrast, what a terror the troll television is. It has the brute power to blank imagination from the hearts of children. It drowns individual thoughts and original images. Sorry.
You okay, Larry?
It drowns. Excuse me.
Take your time.
What's happening? It drowns individual thoughts and original images, corrupt and infected committee thinking, assembly line ideas that induce banality. Still got time?
Oh yeah, loads of time. We're in no rush,
Yes.
Larry.
I needed only one push into my inner self to believe I could fly. My face must have shone with the light of gratitude. I feel it now at 89, still trying to understand life and its amazing surprises and wonders. This happens to me.
You okay, Larry?
I'll get over it. I think I'm taking in too much air. Ownership of my first book was my first experience of heaven. I saw behind the paraphernalia of real life something more real. I saw my mind, my imagination. Suddenly, I knew I could trust that more than what was called real. People dismissed fantasy as unreal, without value. I knew that stories, fantasy, and fiction were more than real. They were glimpses of the possibility of all life. This scared me. I was touching fire. Something in me began to smolder, and the heat challenged all that I was being taught about what people had to do to live, and even about right and wrong. I saw that God was much bigger, much more mysterious, and much more kind than I was being told. The altar boy in me was terrified. I was being taught hellfire, eternal punishment, and damnation. Sulphurous smoke from the pit would curl around my nostrils. I had to choose. I wanted what I saw in books, and I had to step through the gates of hell to get it. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here.
Larry, please tell me you're going to do an audiobook version of your book, because I could listen to you
I
read.
have it. I've done it. It's done.
Oh, brilliant.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Oh, I'm 100% going to buy
It's
that.
in Audible if you can access that.
Is it? Oh, my word. I'll check that out straight after this. Oh, my word. That's absolutely brilliant.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
It's
Larry,
called Effective Memories, How Chance and the Theater Saved My Life. And the chance part of it is my mother talking on the way back from an aptitude test that I failed after I failed to get into a doctorship, and my mother was determined to help me.
yeah.
So she took me to an aptitude test, and I failed those two. I drew pictures on the things, bird cages and airplanes, and we're coming back on the bus to Oakland from Berkeley University, and my mother was saying a rosary in the other seat, and I looked at her and I said, "Mom, don't worry, everything's going to be all right." And she turned to me and she said, "Larry, you've just got to have a chance."
Oh.
And she started to cry. And of course, I started to cry. So they were sitting in the bus there. Yeah.
Larry, are you still okay for time, or do you have to go?
I'm fine.
Because I have to look. Obviously, this is a Star Trek podcast, and I have to ask you about Star Trek at some point. Otherwise, it'd be kind of crazy if I didn't. How did Star Trek V come about?
What?
How did Star Trek V come about?
Oh, of course. Yes. Now we'll get to the real stuff.
No, the real stuff has been everything else we've been talking about, to be honest with you.
Okay, Star Trek was an incredible thing for me. I drove up to the Paramount gates expecting I had been called, to come in to talk about Star Trek, and I had no idea why. I didn't know much about Star Trek at all. And so I drove up, and I was expecting to have the usual guard give me the eye. Who are you? What do you want here? This is a movie studio. You don't look good. And a golf cart came out to meet me. And the fellow jumped off the golf cart and said, "Mr. Luckinbill, leave your car where it is. I'll park it for you. And get in the car with the cart with me, and I'm going to take you to your appointment." That never happens, man, in Hollywood. That's rare. Well, you have to be somebody like Bob Redford,
Yeah.
my pal. I wrote a story about Redford for Esquire.
Oh, really?
Yes, I wrote a lot of stuff for Esquire and Cosmo back in the day. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. But I was not in that category.
Yeah.
So as an actor, although I thought I was. Anyway, I get in a golf cart and we go up to the bungalow where this to take place. We go in and everybody stands up and they shake hands with me. It's Bill Shatner and Harv Bennett, the producer, and the writer even. The writer was over in the corner hiding, those writers in Hollywood. They're shit, I mean. Anyway, the writers are always, subdued eventually by their ego. It doesn't work there. It doesn't work at all. Anyway, so because it's a committee that's going to
Yeah.
write the thing. And Harv actually had written most of this, but Harv was a good writer.
Yes.
And Harv was a good producer. Anyway, they shake hands with me and we sit down and Bill says, I saw you play Lyndon Johnson one Sunday night. I was stuck in some hotel and I turned it on PBS and there you were. And I want you to play Sybok. And Harv says, well, Bill, Larry, maybe he should read the script first. And, Harv is trying to back off on the money situation. And I know what I'm looking at. So I say, yeah, of course I'd like to read the script. And so it goes on like this. But the interesting thing was the reception was so un-Hollywood powerful. And I thought, well, I might have a chance to get this sucker. And little did I know I was already in, man. So I read the script that night, and 8 o'clock in the morning, I called and said, I'm in. And they said, come on down, we'll talk about it. And so we had a conversation about it. And then Bill said to me, I want to talk more to you about this this character, Sybok, because he's really special. And we're bringing him in. He's the first time characterization. And I liked really what you did as Lyndon. And I said, well, why Lyndon Johnson? He said, I don't know. You just had the power. Okay. So we'll have a nice lunch and we'll talk this over and you'll tell me how you feel about the character and how you want to do it. Yeah. They're great. So I'm waiting for this call. I get a call. Bill says, hey, have you got 10 minutes? I want you to come down to the juice bar in Santa Monica. I'm down here now having my juice and let's talk about it. So I come down and stand there with my juice and the two of us. We're going to talk about what I want to do with the character of Sybok. And he said, how do you see playing it? And I said, Lenin. He said, oh, John. I said, no, Vladimir Ilyich. He says, why, a Russian? I said, yes. I said, how does that work? I said, okay, here's what I know about Lenin. He started out wanting to make Russia free. He started out wanting to free the serfs. He started out with a great idea of how to change the world and make it better. When he reached the obstacles that he reached, he turned into a dictator. He completely changed into that. And that's the story of Sybok. I said, Sybok has this power. Give me your pain. Let me have your pain. And then he steals the Enterprise. So he becomes a bandit.
Yeah.
And as he does this, all of the difficulties of we have to go through the barrier and all of that stuff begin to be criticized by the people on board, Leonard and Bill, even the doctor, even DeForest. And so I have to deal with those things if we're actually going to get through the barrier. And I know I own the ship now. So how is this going to be done? And as this happens, he gets into fights. There's a big fight with him and Bill. And I told him, one of the things I told him right away was, those rock guns that you have invented for this movie? He said, yeah, what about it? I said, well, they're kind of interesting. And I don't even want to ask how they work. I mean, what's the motive power that shoots the rock, you know? Is it gunpowder or what? You know? Anyway, I said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have a gun.
Yeah.
And he said, what? I said, no, I don't. Well, you know why? You know why? Because Sybok comes in peace.
Yeah.
His intent is peace. His intent is his personality is peace. I'll call it the human part of him.
Yeah.
And, so he said, oh, okay, all right, well, so we had this fight, but it was like very strange, and I let go of the gun and all that stuff, and it worked, you know.
Yeah.
So then the scenes came where I talked to basically DeForest, and DeForest, I have to say, was my buddy on the picture. We're both Southern boys. He's from Texas, and I'm from Oakland, Arkansas. And there's always that shared thing of we know how it is back there. We don't want to go over there again, you know, that kind of thing. But anyway, he and I got to be buddies, and he was dying then. Well, we all knew it, and but he still had the energy to do this. And so when I said, "Let me take your pain," his eyes and mine locked, and there was reality in that moment. There was absolute reality. And that's the thing I've always sought after when I've done movies. I've always sought after what's in my eyes. Am I really thinking as Sybok and not as Larry?
Yeah.
Is Larry gone now? And you are Sybok. And what is Sybok really about? That scene worked so well. And then my scene with Bill was right after that, where Bill says to me, "You are mad."
Yeah.
And I say, "Am I?" We'll see. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that's not actually it. That's am I? We'll see.
That's right. Yeah, we'll
He
see.
actually thinks maybe I am,
Yeah.
maybe I'm not, and then he says, "We'll see." And then there's the ending where finally Leonard and I get to do, you know, this to each other, brothers. We are now brothers.
Yeah.
And I sacrifice myself for the crew, for the ship. And that's a hero. That's a heroic character. It's not a villain.
Yeah.
And of course, those roles were assigned to, like, Montalban played a villain, and whoever else the next one was.
Christopher Lloyd. Yeah.
Who was it?
Christopher Lloyd.
Yes, Chris Lloyd. Yeah, right. And they were all set up as villains and did villainy things,
Yeah.
but Sybok was different.
Yeah.
And I got to play the different one, and there are two movies I could still stand to watch, and one is The Boys in the Band, which was in 1970, and it was directed by Billy Friedkin.
Yeah.
And the second one was Star Trek, and I could still look at those and not be pissing myself, you know.
And like, do you remember me asking, Larry, when was the last time you actually sat down and watched Star Trek V?
Oh, probably a couple of years ago. I don't watch it often.
Yeah.
I've got a lot to do, you know. I'm writing my second book now called Finding Home.
Oh,
It's
wow.
well, we cut out from the original, from this book, we cut, Lucy and I cut because it had to be slimmed down a little bit.
Yeah.
We cut all of the Africa and the Italian adventures, and I spent 6 or 8 weeks in the Amazon. We've cut
Yeah.
that out, and all of these things. And I went to Costa Rica. I went to Venezuela. I went all over the Peru, Bolivia. I did all of that to try to see these places before they die and get burned up, and then a lot of other adventures that I had. I built a house in the West Indies, and that was a great adventure. I built it with one other guy and had some Guyana timber houses, pieces that prefabs, and then I became a scuba diver, and I had a great experience where I almost died, and was saved by an Australian guy who happened to be in the water with me
Yeah.
at that time. And I mean, I was on narcosis,
Yeah.
and yeah, because I was diving alone basically until this guy showed up, and it was like a miracle. And
And
so those things are interesting things. But what are they about? They're about finding home.
yeah.
Where am I supposed to be?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to? When I was in Africa, I thought, my God, I could live here. I could live here forever. I was offered a job to teach at Makerere College in Uganda. This was before Idi Amin. And I was really, Paul Theroux, if you know the author,
Yeah.
had taught there, an American travel writer.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, this would be great. And the woman who asked me was pretty hot. So maybe she, she was the principal.
Larry, when is this second book? When are you thinking that book will come out?
I don't know. I'm just starting it. So, but it's a lot of it's written already.
Will you promise me something, Larry?
Yes.
Will you come back on our show and talk to us about the second book when you release it?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's an absolute date, Larry, because I definitely want to read that, and I definitely want to talk to you about that as well.
Yeah. When you become yourself somehow, you feel like you are yourself. Now, do you feel like that now that you're running a podcast?
Slowly but surely, yeah. Like you kind of have to become comfortable with yourself, warts and all, and kind of accept who you are. It's funny, right? One of the, like, as we're talking about this and you're telling me about your life, there's actually a line specifically from Star Trek V that I always reference. It's that conversation between Kirk and Sybok. When Sybok says to Kirk about taking his pain away, and Kirk says, I don't want my pain taken away. I need my pain. And he says about, should I have turned left when I should have turned right? And he says about the fact that, these mistakes make us who we are. And I'm always interested in that because I often find when people say, write a letter to your 10-year-old self and say something. And I'm there going, but if you tell them it's going to be okay, they won't take a chance. They won't do something stupid that they'll actually learn from and things like that. And as much as I might look back at my own life and certain things and go, oh God, that was so embarrassing. Why did I do that? I try to look at all these situations and say, it's a learning curve. I learned something from that.
That's right.
Because the person I am today is a combination of all of those. In the same way, Larry, talking to you today has been wonderfully inspirational because you have taken all these situations that you've grown up with your entire life and all this, and you have turned everything around into a way that works for you and who you are as a person. You're a wonderful, engaging, interesting, well-versed, well-written, well-read, well-spoken man. And it's because of all the experiences that you have.
Yes.
And I find that so refreshing.
And I started from pretty much nowhere.
Yeah.
Feeling that I was nowhere and nothing. I was nothing. I said it to myself many times. You're nothing. You'll never be anything. Because I guess my daddy told me that,
Yeah.
And yet, do I forgive my father? Absolutely. He
Mm.
was doing what he could do.
Yeah.
He was trying to help me,
Yeah.
you know, along with all of the drink and all of that stuff. He was still a human. And I think a lot of what you're saying is absolutely, I love that exchange that you just said about, oh, Bill, because that always struck me too.
Yeah.
I need my pain because for years I needed my pain and I lived with that and found out that I didn't need my fucking pain. You know, it was just, just that was somebody talking to me in my ear. You know, you need your pain. Yeah, yeah. My daddy too. He needed his pain. So you know, let drink that
Larry,
down.
Larry, we normally end the interviews with a certain question, but in this situation, I'm 100% going to ask you a totally different one because you're 89 years old. You come across as still being in your early like 50s or 60s. You do not appear to be 89 years old at all. When you look back on your life and your experiences and things like that, and I'm going to be very unfair and ask you this, what's the one bit of life advice that you would offer anybody? And Larry, I think this is the first time you've been caught for words in our entire interview now today.
Yes, yes. That's the first time you stopped me, right? Uh, okay. What's the first? The only thing that I could say, uh, I would say, think well of yourself if you can. Find a way to think well of yourself. Uh, until I thought well of myself, I couldn't get to first base. And I, once I was able to, I began to read Zen. I began to read Buddha. I began to read all the philosophers who have told us that these are, and the psychiatrists who have told us how to find the way to our inner selves. And I'm facing that right now with uh, my one of my sons has married a girl who's quite beautiful and nice and decent, and they have two children, and she is now acting out in such horrendous ways because of what she grew up with and what she was told and her abandonment by her father and all these things, which she is now dumping on my son because why? Because he loves her. And so if you think well of yourself to begin with, you're not going to do those things. On the other hand, if you think well of yourself and too well of yourself, you're just going to be a smug asshole. So yeah, you'll be the kind of guy that you walk away from at a cocktail party. Right? Yeah, nice to talk to you. No,
I,
I'll leave my drink there. Yeah.
so everyone, Larry's book, Effective Memories, How Chance and Theatre Saved My Life, is available now. It's both in print and it's also available on Audible. And obviously we've heard Larry read some of it, so make sure to pick it up. Larry is going to be back with us because he's promised me he's coming back when he's got the second book written. So we're 100% going to continue this wonderful conversation at some point in the future. So until then, Larry, it's been an absolute wonderful honor and pleasure to talk to you. This has been absolutely a
Yeah,
wonderful conversation with you, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you again on when you have the book finished.
I would love that. And if I can possibly do it, one of my bucket lists, I guess, is to get to Ireland again. I was in Dublin briefly, but just briefly, and I've been all over the world, and I've never gotten back to where the wearing of the green and all that stuff, you know, and and I love the beauty of the place, and I love the Banshee movie, terrible
Oh,
movie, horrendously bitter, fantastic, and it fit everything that Frank McCourt believes and everything I sense about my own family. You know, the difficulties of the Irish thing and the difficulties of the Catholic faith and
Yeah.
how all the stuff that went wrong with that. And, you
Yeah.
know, and gradually, slowly, maybe the Berrigan brothers, you know who they were?
Yeah.
Yeah, the two brothers, they were both monks and they
Yeah.
were fighting for the rights of priests to marry and all of that stuff. And Hans Kung, all that stuff I read that criticized the strangeness of uh, the lock that Catholicism has on people
Yeah.
with the laws and the notes and all this stuff. And I just my wife went to Immaculate Conception High School in Hollywood, and her teacher was Ruth Ann Murray, a nun. And Ruth Ann Murray was a fabulous human being, and we just saw her again briefly. And uh, I I thanked her for being so nice to my wife. And I got a new Catholic Bible in the mail yesterday from Ruth Ann Murray, and I know what she's doing because I criticized the church in this book so much, and she's read the book.
So that's why the Bible was in the post to you, Larry, I suppose.
Oh, she says, "Like, take another look, brother." But guess what? I did, and it's not the same old Douay Bible that we knew. If you did, I don't know how old you are, but the Douay Bible was written in such beautiful language, and this stuff is like, let's make it like, hey, boss, God, how you doing over there? What you do today? Okay, I'll do that. Sure, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. Oh, the woman did it. She did it. It's like that kind of language. Come on. Don't.
Trying to appeal to a younger audience, Larry. That's what they're trying to do. Like the younger people in with the current kind of lingo and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Don't think they're stupid.
Larry, thank you so much again for popping on our show. We're really looking forward to having you back again in time. Until then, I've been your host, Joe Hurley. This has been Laurence Luckinbill. Thank you so much for watching.